wanted to end the settlements and needed some assurances that the ending of the settlements would not create an opportunity for greater terrorism. I would like to see the fence come down. I would like to see the wall come down. And if terrorism stops, it will. But President Carter suggests that everything rides on Israel's decision not to give back land, that somehow this is about land, and that small percentage of Israelis who live in the occupied areas and want not to give up land are the only barrier to peace. That simply is not the reality. That is not the world on the ground. And that's why I urge you all, please follow President Carter's advice. Go to Israel, go to the West Bank, go to the Gaza, and come back and think for yourselves about how complex this issue is and how difficult it is to bring about peace in this kind of situation. And he finally says, well, maybe America shouldn't be playing so strong a role. Maybe we should leave Israel's future in the hands of Russia, the United Nations, and the European Union. Let's think about that for just 1 minute, and then we'll turn to questions. The United Nations, that's the same General Assembly that equated Zionism with racism. That is the same Security Council that has never allowed Israel to serve on the Security Council. It is the only nation in the world that cannot have a seat on the Security Council. Libya, Syria, Iraq, Iran can all serve on the Security Council. Then he mentions the International Court. Israel can't serve on the International Court. Libya can. Syria can. How about the UN Human Rights Commission? More than half of their total condemnations have been directed against one country in the world, never against Saudi Arabia, never against Libya, never against Syria, always against Israel. Would any country place their trust in an organization that has been so one-sided? Is Russia really going to contribute to peace in the area when they have their own Chechnya problem and when they are doing everything in their power not to have sanctions directed against Iran's nuclear facilities? Thank God the United States is playing an active role in this area. They must remain an honest broker. And so I joined with President Carter. Let's try to start the negotiations again. Let's reoffer a plan akin to what was offered at Camp David and Taba. It's going to be hard to make peace because although President Carter mentions all the time the fact that the Palestinian Authority is the presidency of the Palestinian government today, he doesn't mention that the legislature, which has to ratify everything, is completely dominated today by Hamas. Hamas, whose charter still to this day calls for the destruction of Israel, calls for the destruction of the Jewish people, blames the Jewish people for the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, the drug importation, you name it. This is Hamas, the government that's in control. Yes, I believe in democracy. And democracy means that voters are accountable for their votes. There are no free votes. There are no free lunches. There are no free votes. When the German people voted for Adolf Hitler, that was a democratic outpouring, and every German who voted for Hitler in the German government was responsible for that voting decision. And the electoral success of Hamas, has consequences. And the consequences are the United States, the European countries, Canada, other countries do not support terrorist organizations. You do not give money to groups to help them buy rockets. And I wish President Carter had his facts straight. He's been saying on every television show in the country that Hamas declared a unilateral ceasefire, and since that time, not a single Israeli has been killed. Tell that to the victims, 16 victims of the Hamas bus bombings in Beersheba on August 31st, 2004. Tell that to the 2 toddlers who were murdered by Hamas rockets on September 29th, 2004. Tell that to the 6 civilians who were killed by the bomb Hamas attack at the Carney Crossing on January 13th, 2005. Tell that to the woman who was killed on July 14th, 2005 by a Hamas rocket. Now, President Carter has said, he reiterated it in an interview on Al Jazeera, he said, rockets are not terrorism. Rockets should not be equated with terrorism. And although today he corrected the statement in his book, a statement which obviously provoked lots of concern, that seemed to justify continuing terrorism until the roadmap was complied with. He has not corrected that statement, and he speaks differently, believe me. What we should do is watch his interview with Al Jazeera and compare it to his interview at Brandeis University. There are two different Jimmy Carters. You heard the Brandeis Jimmy Carter today, and he was terrific. I support almost everything he says. Now listen to the Al Jazeera Jimmy Carter, and you will hear a very, very different perspective. But nonetheless, I welcome his offer for peace. I hope we can work together, and I end this part of my remark with just 3 words: peace, shalom, and salem. Thank you very much.
I am going to conduct the question period. And we haven't had the kind of preparation, and questions limited to 400 characters. I do hope that the questioners are not 400 characters, however. I sense a lot of friendship in this audience. And that can be intimidating to anyone who wants to challenge Professor Dershowitz. And I think I urge you to respectfully listen to the questions which he seeks. And he has made it a stipulation to me. I want people to disagree with me. No batting practice pitching here, please. President Carter was very effective this afternoon and may have, in fact, raised questions in your mind. What about this, sir? What about all of that suffering which he's seen? All of that humiliation? All of those dead children? All of those destroyed homes which we hear about? And his book channels that hurt. Sir, can you address that? That might be a question. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, and here's how we're going to organize this. You see here before me, 3 walking microphones. Come up here, gentlemen. No, right over there. You need to get their attention. By the way, this is becoming a documentary, and some of you may be asked after your question to write a permission for the use of you in the documentary. I myself made it a condition that if I'm in it, that I had hair, but they didn't wait. You will have 1 minute, and I'm going to watch that, to ask the question. And importantly, you're going to have an opportunity to have a rejoinder to Professor Dershowitz's answer. And we'll make that 30 seconds. I think that's important. I must say I was impressed by the range of questions which in fact came out of the previous methodology, and my fears that before that were eased by what I saw happen this afternoon. So respect each other. Those of you who feel the pressure around you of what is clearly a friendly audience, and he can be a friendly person, have the courage to ask the questions, even those which you haven't come to the end of thinking about, but which are roiling in you, and maybe we can get to the bottom of some things here. And one final comment. The justice today said that Dershowitz will get the final word. There is no final word. This is a university. This is an ongoing debate. The hour is going to pass like a train in the night, like a shadow, like an oral examination. We have to keep it up, and we have to promise each other that we will do so in the atmosphere of civility, which, by the way, is one of, you want to talk about how Brandeis is unique. It is unique among American universities in permitting discourse across the range of opinion in an atmosphere, not without passion, but of civility. That's something precious. We should keep it here today, and we shouldn't stop it after this talk. So find them, and I will acknowledge you. You've got to get my attention as you line up people.
Hi, my name is Albert Kahn. I'm a senior. Professor Dershowitz, I wanted to ask you about Hamas in particular. You obviously brought up a number of issues which would cast doubt on President Carter's more rosy picture for engaging Hamas, but do you feel that the boycott by Western governments of funds for the Palestinian government has been effective in weakening Hamas? If so, would you wish to continue it? And if not, would you propose any alternatives to the policy?
I think it's been effective. I think it's the right policy. The United States and all the European countries will not support a government that engages in terrorism. It's as simple as that. I mean, I don't think there's a very hard moral issue there. If you engage in terrorism, if you target babies and children and school buses and send rockets into kindergartens, the government's not going to give you money that you can use to buy more rockets. And, you know, this idea that President Carter had of laundering the money, of basically sending it to legitimate organizations and having it get to the Palestinians indirectly. Money is money. It's fungible. And the money that the Palestinians today are using to pay the salaries and feed the people would then be used to foment terrorism. And it's part of the American and European policy not to foment terrorism. There's one simple solution to the problem, and that is a new election in Palestine in which Hamas is resoundingly defeated. By the way, when I was with President Carter last year on the day of the election, we were both at the Herzliya conference, which is going on as we speak today. President Carter said he was going to Ramallah to watch the election. I was going to East Jerusalem. It was a fair election, we both concluded. He predicted that Hamas would not win, that it was over-exaggerated, and of course, they did win. I think, by the way, Hamas should be engaged. I think there should be conversations, discussions, peace negotiations, but the carrot and the stick both have to be held out. And the carrot is payments, and the stick is that Israel will retaliate and respond. You know, by the way, the ceasefire sounds like, oh, what a good organization Hamas was. It was after 3 or 4 of its major leaders had been killed by Israel that they finally came out with the white flag and said, let's have a ceasefire. So it was a ceasefire grown from strength, not from weakness. So I hope there'll be negotiations with Hamas, but I think the policy of the Europeans, the United States, and Israel is to delegitimate Hamas and to make them into the minority party that they should be. By the way, you know, they won this time electorally, but look what Hezbollah is doing in Lebanon today as we speak. They're trying to win power there violently. They will take power any way they want. They use democracy as a means. And there are 2 kinds of democracy. There's functional democracy and structural democracy. And structural democracy is just the democracy of votes. Hitler won structural democracy and then eliminated functional democracy. And that's what's going on today with Hamas. So I hope we can see engagement with Hamas, but I wouldn't diminish the impact of the stick and the carrot so that terrorism no longer becomes their main means of not achieving statehood. Hamas is not so interested in statehood, but denying Israel the right to exist as a Jewish state.
Would you like to follow that up?
Okay. I just want to make one point about that. I asked for the follow-ups because I think follow-ups are very important to help press a speaker about his or her views. You don't have to ask a question, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't have to have that fake question mark at the end. You can make a statement, as long as it's a minute, and then follow it up with another statement. And I prefer hostile questions. I want to know what's on your mind, what are the hardest issues, and I want to be able to respond to them, because I know there are hostile questions in your minds among some of your colleagues, and so please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
I'm a history and politics student. I'm a strong believer. Oh, can you hear?
Yeah, I can.
I believe that we should look back into the past to analyze the problems of today, and this is kind of an indirect question. When looking at the Israel-Palestine conflict, I see that it as, well, if the Palestinians commit an act of violence and everyone says land for peace, and you say, okay, you act peacefully and then we'll give you the land, and then you give them the land after they ask peacefully. Well, then doesn't that just say, if you behave violently again and promise to behave peacefully again, we'll just give you more land? It seems to me to be kind of the repeating cycle of Chamberlain's policy of appeasement. But I was wondering if there's anything other than land for peace that could be used.
No, I think land for peace